We are actually live now. So today I am welcoming to my mobile studio Flood, or I guess Flood?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I go by Flood. I have been going by that for a long time, but the four F's come from Found, which was like an old images app, like sort of before Tumblr, and it just felt like it worked. So,
It is very distinctive. And
yeah.
we're here today to talk largely about clanking, but I also want to hear kind of your backstory and where you came from. Like, that was a clue that you just dropped, the old images app pre-Tumblr.
Yeah.
What's your, like, internet origin story?
Man, I mean, I don't know. I guess a lot of it comes from like early days just being like a young designer like back when I was going to school and just sort of exploring a lot of like inspiration, creative apps, that sort of stuff, and sourcing images for inspiration. So that's like sort of where everything started. I went to school for industrial design originally at a school called Wentworth in Boston. And yeah, did, furniture design, that sort of stuff for a bit, product design, worked for Form Labs and New Balance and stuff like that. And then yeah, there was like, not a whole lot of jobs at the time, and I was looking for something in product design, and a couple of friends of mine were devs, and they were like, well, you should try your hand at, doing UI UX because it's very similar. So that's where I started working in that and been doing that for about 10 years now, but then graphic and 3D and all that stuff too. So kind of everything all together.
I think of you as like a visual identity guy. Is that not really accurate?
Yeah, I mean that's where everything starts. When we start a project with someone, a lot of it is like mood boarding, vision boards, that sort of stuff, choosing fonts, choosing visual palettes, those sorts of things. So that's where everything comes from. And then yeah, as projects progress, we typically get into like website builds and then apps and dApps and that sort of stuff. That wide range, but my favorite part really is that beginning stages area. Because that's where like a lot of the fun is and the creative ooze comes out that then trickles into something like button styling or stuff like that. So but definitely the beginning is my favorite part of every project.
It's kind of magical to those of us who are not visual or like don't work in that domain the way that you can boil down all this complexity into an image like a logo. And it's amazing how effective it can be. It's sort of alchemical.
Yeah, it sort of feels like that sometimes. It feels like almost like immaculate conception. Like you feel the brand coming to you through the fog over time. And I think a lot of designers feel that way because you don't really know what you're gonna end up with, and that's the fun part of the process is taking a lot of that visual inspiration, taking like websites and brands that the client you're working with likes, and trying to just connect all of those things. And I know, there's a lot of people out there that like are super active on design Twitter and stuff like that. And I feel like over the years, I've just started to look less at what other people are doing and more at what gets me excited and what the clients are excited about, and trying to push in that direction because you could go down the road of like analysis paralysis or just like not looking at too much inspiration of what other people are doing and not just working on getting somewhere that is really unique and exciting. So yeah.
What is exciting you right now? Like where you feel like you're drawing from in terms of it doesn't have to be like direct references, but I guess what's got your juices flowing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. A lot of the stuff that I've seen in like the Web3 branding space as a whole feels in a large part very samey. So like I'm really trying to push in a direction of like having a little bit more grit, more character, more personality. So yeah, I guess that's like kind of where it comes from, and it comes from like a number of different areas. It could be fashion, it could be like old video games, it could be computer interfaces, it could be just straight up like nature, like I don't know, like a saw a bunch of carvings on a tree and I was like, oh, that would be really cool to try and bring that in. Also, like some of the more subversive stuff, like Calvin urinating on logos. I think that that's like really fun in its own way, and you can work within that system to kind of be a little bit, mischievous with some of like the branding elements that aren't necessarily like a core logo or a core part of the brand. And I think that a large part of branding is continuing to build on it. So with Clanker specifically, like we went through a bunch of different concepts that there was no brief for. I just sort of launched into that because me and Proxy had worked together early last year to do the Proxy Studio branding.
I
So I had
remember
a
that.
good idea of where he wanted to take Clanker. And, you know, we went from everywhere from like mechanical brands and tools, like, you know, because that's like the act of working on something mechanical to like, what does Clanker sound like? Like when you make that noise, clank, clank, like what does that sound like as visual language? What does it look like as a font? What does that feel like? And yeah, I mean, some of the stuff, like we took them through sort of like past, present, and future of Clanker. And like the idea is that like Clanker was like this knight that was just sort of like really tired of fighting, and like that's what Clanker is. It's just like, give me a token name, give me an image, give me a ticker, and I'll launch it. And what does that look like, you know, currently, right? So like some of the, it doesn't necessarily correlate, but like a lot of the inspiration was coming from like construction sites and like, you know, sort of like people wearing like sort of Carhartt jackets, that sort of stuff. The sort of sign painting logos that you'll see on the side of construction vehicles. Thinking about it as more of a blue collar thing because, you know, with Clanker itself, you know, it needs to fit a large scope of visual language because there's not only like fun tokens that are like Fartcoin and Bumshaft, the UBI index of coins, but there's also stuff like Native and Banker, you know, that it needs to fit that full range. So yeah, with a project like Clanker, I feel like the logo needs to change quite often and be remixable for people as well. So a lot of the assets that we're creating, we just want to teach people how to clank and work within that visual language. And I'd say somewhat similar to the way Hire does it, but like, yeah, I guess expressing that on Clank World's website or something like that, you know, maybe the logo changes every time on reload and it has a different feeling to it. So you get this general sense of Clanker without it having a set logo, which I think is a fun way to think about that brand in particular anyway.
Yeah, what you're describing strikes me as very like internet native and kind of embedded in the fast moving meme culture that especially crypto has embraced, but it's really all over the internet, and that like permissionless remixing. That's an interesting thing to think about integrating into branding. And you're right that like hire, that kind of is the concept of hires. Like what if we take this simple, powerful idea of like aspiration and how can we proliferate it without, you know, having one creative director deciding what it's going to look like.
Totally, yeah. And I feel like Hire does a really great job of that just through like if there is a visual palette or a visual like idea or direction, the community sort of votes on it by like giving it traction, right? Like whether that's a recast or a like or whatever it is, and then these visual themes get picked up as something that fits the higher branding, which I think is, you know, obviously with UGC and all this stuff that's been happening, you know, the last couple of years, and like a lot of this stuff is just people in their spare time playing with the higher brand. I feel like that's something that can be replicated and should be because you want those people kind of speaking for the brand and filtering it out and figuring out what it is. I think that there's a level of curation that needs to happen to a degree, but that's always a tough one. It comes up in conversations a lot with clients and just with like people that I'm talking to from Warpcast is like, how do you do UGC the right way? And I think everyone's still trying to figure it out. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one because you do cede some control. Like that's a necessary part of it. Is that it reminds me of old Twitter's like brand, you know, their design book docs would say that the Twitter bird logo was not a bird. I'm like, I'm not sure why they hit on that or like why that felt important to them, but
Yeah.
it's an example of like a mindset that really does not actually work with the internet. Like you can't have a bird symbol and tell people like this is not a bird. That's just not going to work with the way that people process and metabolize images and symbols.
Right. No, that's crazy. I actually had never really seen that or heard that, but I don't know what they expected it to be. I mean, it's a bird, you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they were going for there. There's got to be some, like, there was some conversation that was had that ended in them saying, like, this is not a bird, but I'm not sure. Like, could it be a trademark thing? I don't know.
Could
I'm
be.
not sure what it was. That's a little bit of Twitter esoterica for you.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to ask about, so we heard, you know, it's interesting that you were formally educated in design. I feel like that's actually sort of unusual in these circles. And I'm curious how you came through, like you came into tech, and then how did you get from tech in general to crypto slash Web3 in particular?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I guess a few friends of mine were, you know, talking about Bitcoin. And this was back, you know, I think a year or two after the white paper was released. And Yeah, I was just working in a group of people that were interested in that stuff, and I think it was about a couple months after Ethereum, had released the coin and whatnot to trade. I just threw, 20 or 30 bucks in and didn't really think about it. But I was watching a lot of videos about Vitalik. I didn't really understand what any of it meant, but I was excited by the energy and just trying to understand what it meant. And yeah, I guess over the course of like 6 to 8 months, I tapped into like, crypto Twitter that was just starting to take off. And then I guess it'd been a couple years later, around 2016, 2017. I think I got into Ethereum sometime mid 2015. I can't really remember exactly, but that's when I got into like NFTs. And a friend of mine, Art Gnome, who's like, one of the first people to write about NFTs and crypto art. I connected with him early. He lived close by to me at the time, so we met a few times and talked about it, and then got into generative art, a lot of the first stuff that came out on Tezos. I wasn't super early to art blocks, but spent a lot of time in the NFT world for a few years, and then also around that same time getting back in 2016, 2017, realized the Ethereum that I invested was worth a little bit more than it was. And that's when I started trading and playing with that. And yeah, I mean, once you get sucked in and you start to understand it and you have those moments where it clicks, like everybody has their own like judgment moment where it finally clicks for them, whatever that is. I was just bought in and basically, in the eco since then full time.
Do you remember who your first couple of like crypto world clients were?
Yeah, the first one was Right Click Save, which is a journal about NFTs and generative art in general. And that was back, I want to say, late 2019 into 2020. I can't remember if it was that or 2020, 2021. But that was the first official project that we worked on as a company before we were even called Operating System. And then we worked with their I guess parent brand, which is Club NFT, that backs up NFTs on their app and their branding and all of that stuff. So I think that ended up being around like 12 to 16 months long, that relationship. And we still are working on a product for them coming out soon, Club NFT. But yeah, it's one of those things. I think it's our longest standing relationship, and it was our first crypto based clients.
Yeah, let's talk about operating system. How long? So it sounds like you guys have been working together, as you said, before you became operating system. How did you become operating system?
Yeah, I guess there was a moment where like, I don't know, the market was turning into sort of a bear market, and we were kind of getting tired with just working within Web 2. And I was like, well, why don't we just try, starting to play around with some stuff in crypto and building in Web 3. And my technical co-founder was totally down to do it, and the other founder was down to try it as well. So yeah, I mean, that's when we switched from what we were doing, which was a lot of various projects in Web 2, food and bev, and photography and architecture sites, to just starting to switch over our client base over to Web 3. And now I think I can't say that we're working on anything that isn't in Web 3 at this point, which is really cool. It's only been, I'd say, about 2.5 years since like we formalized the idea around switching over to Web3 clients. And it has its ups and downs. You got to keep the lights on through the tough times, but that's the thing about this space, is that you just got to stick around long enough. I've learned that over the years. But yeah, I mean, we've gotten to a point now where it feels like the market's swinging back, and a lot of clients are either lined up for projects or currently working on things. I think we're involved in 8 different projects at the moment, and I think there's 3 or 4 more people about to come in as well over the next month and a half or so. But yeah, it's been great, just focusing on this because it's my passion. I think a lot of us, we wake up every day, we check the charts, we check Warpcast, we check crypto Twitter, and just being able to do that full time, even though it might not pay as much as someone in my position or my partner's positions might be able to get out there, it means the world to be working in this space, and we love doing it. It's our life's work.
It's certainly never boring.
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed that. Like,
Oh, yeah.
there's always something going on. There's always excitement.
Yeah, there's always something going on, and like if you miss a few days, like I took maybe 3 or 4 days off last week, just doing some traveling, and it felt like every time you come back, you just know you're going to be lost for like a whole day until you have the time to catch up. And in the end, like not really much changes, but like it's all those little pieces of lore and those moments that like make you excited to be around, right? So
So tell us about the decision to launch OPSYS, the token, the Clanker.
yeah. So I was at Clank Hack with Proxy and Derek from Native and Nick from Clank Fun and a number of other people. There was like I guess like the idea that they would be launching V2 or V3, I can't remember at the time, but even though it's only a couple months ago, it just goes to show. But Proxy was like, we're going to be doing a pre-sale function on the next contracts. He hit me up one night and was like, hey, we're launching it pretty soon, like in the next few minutes. And I was like, oh shit, I better actually do this. So, just straight up launch the token. My co-founders were traveling, so like they couldn't even get into the pre-sale. So I just like straight up was like, all right, I got a couple hours because like it's 2 hours before the bonding curve expires and then you can claim back and try again. But I was like, all right, I got 2 hours. I can like, go collect some coins, move some stuff around, do some transfers, whatever. And within like 5 or 6 minutes, the token bonded. And like, I think we only got like 3% on launch, which actually wasn't that bad. I've heard other people, have tougher times with it, but we've been able to get back a number of it by just using the fees to buy back. Either way, I mean, launching it was amazing. We've been talking about doing something like this for years, and we had a lot of ideas around it. But then, of course, once you launch it, you have to actually like have a program, figure out what's going on with the token. So, we took some time to kind of think about what we wanted to do, talk to legal a little bit to figure out like what we could do in terms of like rewards and those sorts of things. It came out like we rolled out this idea of a 2-tier benefit system. So like basically the first tier anybody can get into. I think it's like a fraction of a cent to get into. And we'll be launching, members only content, Telegram, that sort of stuff once we go live with the benefits DApp that we're going to launch for partnership members, and then also giving access to like our public library of design scrap work. So like past projects, logos we haven't used, those sorts of things, mood boards, other things like that will be in some Figma public files that people can use. And I think we're putting together all of that for launch, but being careful with past clients, what we actually put in there. So it's all a big experiment. We're figuring it out. But I think, yeah, the premium tier partnership ones are like really our biggest portion of this. And it's because when we were thinking about launching a token, it was like, why are we doing this? Like, we're not going to do it to make money. That's not really how we saw it, at least for the first year, because it's going to be an experiment figuring out what's going on. So we just thought about, everyone is checking the charts every day, most times before they check like social or email. And it's like, if people have your coin, they're looking at your name every day. So it's like having a business card in everyone's wallet, which I think is a really cool way to think about it. And then with the fees, we've used them only to buy back the token for the time being. And I think we have close to 7%, which we want to use for rewards once we're cleared on a model that's going to work legally. But for the time being, we're only buying back for the first year. The only thing that we might do is stream rewards if once we get clearance directly from the fees to top holders and clients, which I think is a good thing because, using something like Fffflood allows for you to stream fees, and as price fluctuates, it's a nice thing to see in your wallet every day that your stack is growing, and you want the people that are the most convicted to hold the most of the tokens. So that's something that we're working on. We're not going to roll that out immediately. It'll probably be a few weeks as a fast follow after we launch the DApp, but it's definitely something that we want to do.
There are a couple of things that I find really interesting about this model. One is that it's like such a like building in public way to approach your partnerships, like with Native, or I mean your working with Clanker also has been very much like a building in public kind of approach, which feels again like very internet native. And having this way for people to tangibly participate in that and to like, they can pick up OPSYS, they can pick up Native, be like, yes, I am into what they're doing together, I want to be part of it too. And that also applies to like most design agencies don't really have like there's no way for you to participate like that. Like say like IDEO or something. Like
Yeah.
that's a known brand. People are really interested in their approach. They're interested in how they do things. They watch YouTube videos about it, but there's no way to like, I don't know, tangibly support and then also kind of feel like you're part of the movement. And so it's really interesting that you're taking this approach. So I've never seen like a design firm do that before. And it's, this very like crypto way of doing things with I don't know, old world business is not the right way to say it, because obviously you guys are very digital, but I guess a craft, It's not like software necessarily, although I guess there is a software component coming.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think one of those things that it's tough with design because I think that a lot of designers out there, stuff is very precious to them. And like how the sausage is made, if I want to put it that way, it's like people think that the process is messy and therefore they shouldn't show it, or they're afraid of showing where they got their inspiration, or certain parts of their process they're not confident on showing. But at the end of the day, everyone's learning, so just get out there and show it. And I think that the most interesting part that we've heard over the years with clients is the work in progress stuff. And like we were doing weekly wrap ups back in like November, December, and we're going to continue doing those this year at some point. I think it'd probably be every other week because it's hard to keep up and edit. Like to edit a 1 minute video on a week's worth of content is like 3 or 4 hours. But I think that's one of the most important things is like building in public. Like, of course it's kind of crazy. Like these 2 hour long meetings with Derek from Native are just going to be publicly available, but we're not scared of like people, seeing our process and trying to copy it, because it's all about, if that's a thing, it's all about who's delivering it and like all the stuff that we're doing behind the scenes. And if somebody wants to copy the process, fork it, make it better, all the better to everybody involved. So yeah, I think that's a huge part of it, is definitely like the building in public aspect as much as we can. Because I know certain clients that we've been talking with, even ones that are going to be in the program, are not so comfortable with it. So we'll do it as much as we can, but I'm not sure we'll be able to do it every time.
Yeah, well, it doesn't necessarily make sense for every type of project.
Right.
And there is, there, as much as there's power in building in public, there's also power in putting something together and then launching it with a big splash once you're finally ready for it to go prime time.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'd say one of the biggest things too is like launching a Clanker. I don't think a lot of people are aware, and I was talking to Proxy about this a few days ago, is like, I don't think people are aware of the fees that you can make just by launching a Clanker, because you're getting those fees in your token and WETH. So I was talking to Colfax the other day, who does a lot of work in Hire, and he's, considering doing a project. And I was like, you should launch a token. And he's like, well, launching a token, what does that mean? And, had a few questions. But at the end of the day, I think that what separates Clanker from Pump Fund, and I think a lot of people out there probably already know this, but those fees are great for people that are growing and possibly could sub in for some sort of small amount of venture funding for smaller projects. And if you have a greater vision, then you're going to get, more of those trading fees on volume, which is going to help you sustain longer. So can't say enough about Clanker itself and what it can do monetarily for someone that's starting something.
And it's amazing to see how the ecosystem has been developing over like a fairly short amount of time in the grand scheme of things. And
Yeah.
there are all these different, I call it the Clankerverse. There are all these different Clankerverse projects, many of which like interoperate with each other. And that's kind of the magic of crypto in general, is both the permissionlessness, that you can just have an idea and create something without needing to go through a bunch of gatekeepers. And then also the composability, where you can take these different tools and put them together. And that also is what makes Farcaster so great. Circling back, how did you find Farcaster?
Man, I think it was honestly a friend of mine, Lonely Boy, who works for Verse. It's like a NFT gallery platform. And he was like, yeah, you should check it out. Like, it's popping over here, basically, like is what he said. And this was back in January of last year. So I think that was like right around the time that frames were dropping, if I remember right. But I remember hopping on and being like, oh, this is really rad. Because like now if we can bring apps into a feed and then you get the whole social graph aspect of it too, the pieces started to connect and align. And yeah, it just made me a lot less bullish on a lot of the other social apps that I was using. And that's when I was like, I got to dive into this full time and just like dedicate myself to it. And I think we were in Venice at Bright Moments last year, and I met Kagusha for the first time. And that was also like another moment, because I think that was like a week after I like actually committed full time to it. And then, yeah, I mean, she happened to have a lot of time last summer. We worked on a lot of Hire stuff, and yeah, just the momentum and the signal to noise ratio, I feel like is the biggest part that is such a benefit.
Yeah, I remember you guys worked together on, you did some higher athletics merch that I own.
Sweet. Hell yeah. Yeah, I mean that was a fun drop. And I think that higher athletics it's more of a seasonal thing right now. I feel like there's some conversations we're having. I think it'll probably bubble up again as we get towards summer again. So, I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
when
just been
people get
fun working.
outside.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, not that you can't lift or run or whatever now, but it just feels better, when it's easier.
That's something that I also like about hires, that there are kind of these like bursts of energy as people have inspiration and like time and the logistical capacity to put things together. But it not having it be such a relentless pace is actually sort of refreshing compared to everything else, and it makes it feel like cozier too.
Yeah, and I think it's like there's almost like this inverse relationship with the chart because it feels like when it goes down, we get more creative. At least that's what I've seen. I don't know if anybody else out there listening or watching has seen that too, but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a fun thing to watch, and it's it gets quiet sometimes, but then it jumps up in terms of like what everybody's doing and creating every once in a while when it feels right. So
And you get like little sort of mini memes that take off, like the HB thing that people are playing with right now.
yeah, yeah, HB. I mean, I think it's higher bitch is the thing. I think that was Saintless. I can't really remember.
Yeah, St. Louis.
But yeah, it's taken off, and then Happy Birthday we know is taken off the last couple of weeks. And I think this is kind of a fun one because it's like a Trojan horse for people basically pumping their rewards numbers. I don't know, I saw a bunch of higher Happy Birthday stuff happening like last week, and I was like, why is everybody wishing people happy birthday when it's not their birthdays? And it's like, oh, because it's an easy way to maybe farm Warpcast rewards. And I was like, that's kind of hilarious, to be honest.
I was very confused at first because I thought it really was Colfax's birthday, and
Mm-hmm.
then as I kept going down the feed, I was like, wait, there's something going on here.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. I think that's what it is, and nobody's really talked about it yet, or at least I haven't seen it yet, but it's funny, I don't think they're banning the word happy birthday from Warpcast rewards at least yet, so just keep going on the fun.
I appreciate the irreverence and the kind of like trickster energy that is all over crypto. It's one of the things that makes the industry fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's what I love about it. I mean like today I took that and spun it into Happy Friday. It's not Friday, but like maybe someone out there is like, "Oh shit, it's Friday." And then they're like, "Oh no. Does he not know it's Friday or was he just pulling my leg?" It's like, yeah.
Is it Friday? Maybe in a spiritual sense, it's Friday.
Yeah,
Friday
could
lives
be.
within us all.
It is, yeah. No, I have no idea what day it is most times. So, thanks the Lord for my Google Calendar, basically.
That's me whenever I have to sign a form. I never know what day of the month it is.
Yeah, yeah, straight up. It's like it could be any day. It doesn't matter because it's like most of us just work weekends, and it's like, yeah, it's the passion of it, and that's why we forget, right? That's what I'm gonna chalk it up to.
I'm curious what projects have your attention right now. And I guess this could include the ones that you're working on, but also just that you've seen out in the cryptosphere.
Yeah, I mean, banker's a huge one. I think like what's going on there with like being able to talk to an agent to just trade is really neat. And I think that once that starts to hit, general consumers, hopefully, and it's, a little bit more accessible and maybe people are up a little bit more on like how to talk to AI, that could, really be interesting, not only in crypto, but in TradFi. So I think that like what Deployer is doing there is really, really rad. And then, yeah, I mean, I think that this project called The Creators is a really interesting one. These are some people I've met through some past projects, but I think that what they're doing is trying to build sort of a database of creators on Base. And yeah, I think that there's some connections that are going to be made there that will be really, really great for the ecosystem in a greater sense. And I can't really talk too much about it, but it's a big one that I'm interested in following and working on. So. And then, yeah, I mean, everything that Clanker will be doing too. I know that they're working on a lot. I know that there's people out there that maybe have been ruminating on what's happening next, but trust me, there's a lot happening in the back end right now in terms of functionality and composability for the future. So, yeah, I know it's not, and I don't think that the token launcher is the end of it all. There's a whole lot more that's in store there too. So, yeah, that's a top three, just top of mind, but I could probably keep going.
It's really interesting that Clanker both encompasses the like kind of joking meme coins and these various like actual businesses that are using Clanker as an economic substrate.
Yeah.
It's very flexible, like you were talking about with needing the logo to work in various different contexts.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think a large part of that is, someone like Derek saw the fees model, and you compare that to something like Pump, where the platform's making a large amount of money and they're making money on quick turnaround of pump and dumps. Like it's just a more sustainable model, not only for the network itself, Clanker, the protocol, but also for everybody using it. And yeah, I mean that's sort of the most beautiful thing about it is it's encompassing everything. Like nobody's really building serious projects on Pump. There's a few, but I would say the signal to noise is probably higher on Clanker, all said and done.
Yeah, if you look at like the top Clanker projects, it's like Banker, Native, and then you also have like Dickbutt on there. So it's very
Yeah.
much a mix of things.
Yeah, but like the UBI index is like it's amazing, right? Like it's based and like I think that those people are building just as hard, in their own way at the memetic culture, right? And that has its
Hmm.
own ups and downs, just the same way, Derek might go dark for a couple days building native, right? Like everybody's building in their own sort of like roller coaster at their own pace of where they think this stuff is going to go. Yeah, it's just interesting to see all of that captured by one protocol.
Well, and an underrated kind of killer value proposition of crypto is one, just like entertainment, it's like fun, and two is community. Like that is what gets people hooked as much as the charts is the people that you meet and the friendships that you make.
Yeah, yeah, and that that could be misconstrued as like, oh, all I made at the end of the day was like the friends that I made along the way, and I lost a lot of money. But I honestly think that like the friendships you make along the way are the most important because like not only do you share this weird love of this platform Warpcast and like these strange meme coins that like, but at the same time you realize that you have so much more in common with these people because you kind of think the same way, naturally. Like the substrate is the same. Like anytime I hop on a call with someone that's on Warpcast or in the space in general, you feel like you met someone that you've known for a long time most of the time. And I think that that's really great. It's sort of like bearish on like my actual friends that I've known for a long time, or like childhood friends or school friends or stuff like that, because it's like I feel like I don't have the same connection because like this is my world, and I think for a lot of us it is. But I think that's okay. Like they'll come along when they're ready, and I'll be there for them when they're ready. We all will. But in the meantime, let's fucking go and like just keep going and making friends within the space and keep supporting it. So.
And you don't even have to lose large amounts of money. Like you can always just play with a little bit.
Yeah,
I've heard that some people even make money in crypto. I don't know if I've met any.
yeah, they're out there. Sometimes you just forget to sell on your round trip and la di da, right? And then you get to talk about that story where you round trip something. I think everybody has that story. And then, yeah, the people that do make money, they're either really, really loud about it or they don't say anything about it. So it's like, yeah, it's a fun one.
That's been an interesting effect of interface and people having like a really easy way to follow people's wallets and know whose wallet they're following is that now there's like drama about who sells when. And it's not, there's always been some amount of that drama, but it's hitting people who are selling much smaller amounts than it used to. You used to have to be selling like billions for people to get mad at you. Now someone might get mad at you for, a few $1,000s.
I know. And I was talking to people about this the last couple months since like the social aspect of like chart watching came about where you can see where people buy and sell. And yeah, I mean, the people that I've talked to, it's like it's fun, but it's also at the same time, you're catching later alpha unless you're right there in that moment, buying it, or you have a bot that's like using it, but then at that point you wouldn't even have to use interface. But the general sentiment that I'm hearing from people is that like they're using a non-wallets now because they just don't want the sell shaming or like, the buy copy trading on them. And I think that that's fair. I think that that's fair, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean it's just a natural like arms race, people reacting to other people's reactions to them.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting to watch it evolve and how there's all this back and forth.
No, totally, totally. Yeah, I don't use those apps. I did in the beginning, but then I was like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about this. So, yeah, I just kind of like raw trade at this point.
I don't really yeah. I find actual trading like too stressful, so I just like mess around, not really
Yeah,
trying to make money.
buy and hold.
I'm always pleasantly surprised when something makes money. I'm like, wait, really?
Yeah, and then you look at it and you're like, damn, should I sell this? Oh, I'll just sell a little bit, and then it's like token price down for the next 6 months. But
Yeah,
that's the way it goes.
that's the game. I want to show you my shirt because I wore it in your honor.
Oh hell yeah! What do we got? What do we got? What do we got? Let's go. Let's fucking go. Yeah.
I got that for super cheap on like Grailed or whatever, and I have no idea what the backstory is of it, but it's so tongue in cheek. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like large brands like Nike, like when people were exploring the higher brand, they were finding all of these like weird little higher things that Nike's done in the past because they just crank out so much, right? And it's like, it's very interesting the way that those brands work on a higher level, right? Because it's like there's so many different versions of the brand and messages that they're putting out over years and years and years. So, like that one, who knows what that meant at the time, but it's rad.
Like, I think Nike has done a sneaker version of the iconic tabbies. Like, they do all kinds of weird stuff
Hmm.
alongside their mainstream collections. And actually, I think I didn't really know so much about the like Nike nerd world until after joining Warpcast and seeing a bunch of people posting all these odd little things. And that's something that's also really fun is people sharing their idiosyncratic passions. You get to learn about all these different weird corners of the creative universe that you wouldn't have explored otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, like I forget the name of the channel, but there's some like computer ephemera channel that's like it's like old computer graphics and operating systems and like banking terminals and like I just find that super fascinating. It's like I was working on a project for Transient Labs last year and I shared that in the channel and that's where like a large part of the inspiration for that project came from was that small little channel on Warpcast where like there was 5 or 10 people that are like super enthusiastic and have archives of this stuff just to keep posting. It's so cool.
Yeah, it really like there's so much information and just material that has accreted over, the whole of human civilization, and this is a new way to surface it and to interact with it, which is really fun. Maybe in a couple decades people are going to be posting your designs in like throwback archive channels.
Hey, maybe, that would be fun. I don't expect it, but it would be fun.
I'll expect it for you.
All right, I love that.
Well, thank you for joining us. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to make sure to bring up?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered pretty much most of it. Yeah, I think this was a great conversation all in all. Yeah, I went a bunch of places I wasn't expecting, which is always great, and the
Same.
questions were phenomenal. So thank you.
Thank you for taking the time, and people should check out OPSYS, see what they think. Look at, poke around, see what there is to explore. Because it's
Drop
really
it.
it's world building.
Yeah, drop us a DC. Hit the general email address on the website. However you want to do it. Yeah, just reach out if you have any questions or want a little bit of ideation around an idea. Happy to hop on a call anytime. So yeah,
All right, this has been Flood, folks. That's 4 Fs.
you bet.